Thank you for watching the Taste Media Group Intelligence Series. We are live here on Facebook, and today I am joined by Scott Christiansen of Root3 Marketing, also our landlord. Thanks a lot for joining us here today, Scott.
You're welcome. It was a long trip.
Yeah, exactly. And so I know it's been a while since our last episode. It's been so long. When I looked on Facebook, it said like about a year ago. So
you got to wait for the right guest.
We've been on hiatus. We've been dark, as I like to say in the industry. But we're here. We're live with you, Scott, of Root3 Marketing. And for everyone watching this live on Facebook, if you're watching on LinkedIn or YouTube, it's going to be posted, so it's not live. But right now, we are live on Facebook. Scott, tell us about Root3 Marketing and all that you guys have going on here.
Root3 is a lead generation focused marketing firm working with business-to-business companies. I like to say what we do is we work with companies who sell something really expensive and complicated to a very small number of people who are incredibly hard to access and influence. So it's pretty fun.
And what you're speaking to also is like the B2B space, which for those of us that operate businesses, it's so tough. It's not general market, it's not blasting the message out there, it's finding exactly who we want to target. And so how do you guys kind of go about that?
Well, there's not a educate, buy scenario ever. Most of our clients have a 9, 12, 18, 24-month sales cycle. And a great year could be 2 deals for some of our clients. So it's a completely different kind of sale, and you have to anticipate the entire sales pathway and come up with a marketing plan that's going to allow people to progress through the pipeline instead of, like I said, educate, buy. It just doesn't exist.
Exactly, and so for those people that are out there watching this who might run their own marketing company, when you're out there and you're telling a client, you're going to engage with us, but it might take 1.5 to 2 years before you see an ROI or see some of the stuff start to come through. How do you kind of set those expectations where in most agency type relationships, clients want to see something yesterday?
Right. I mean, we do have tactics that we can bring to bear that do usually generate some immediate results, because there's things that people aren't doing in their marketing, like they haven't educated their referral sources in the last 12 months. They haven't educated their channel partners in the last 12 months. And those are the people who know them who can drive that next round of referrals. So a lot of our clients grew their company to the point it is based on referrals, which is kind of a false sales cycle, because it's people who already know you, you don't have to educate them, and they're being brought in through a trusted source. So it accelerates the sales cycle, kind of falsely. So then when you want to really put in a sales and marketing machine, that's where I have to sit down and have that conversation. By that point that they're willing to hire us, they've experienced the longer sales cycle of a cold lead to a client. So they understand that what I have to educate them about is what we do when we put these processes in place is likely not going to be different than their natural sales cycle. If their natural sales cycle is 12 months and we bring them a lead, it's still going to be 12 months. We're always working on ways to shorten the sales cycle, but we're not magicians.
But to that point, you can kind of increase their efficiency. Can you kind of talk about tactics you use to increase that efficiency?
Sure. So the first thing was that point that when we first start working with people, generally that next grouping of immediate deals is already in their database. So re-engaging your client database and those referral partners and channel partners. So I talked about the referral partner and channel partner side of things. The client database, why is that important? Is a lot of companies, when they start to grow, they're worried about new business and just new business, which is wonderful. You should be thinking about new business. But what about inside those current clients and increasing client utilization? And they might have 4 services they're selling, and if they look at their client database, 90% of their clients are only using 1 service. Well, those clients already believe in you. They know their messages. You're already integrated with their workflows. So to spend time marketing to that group of people could bring in that next round of growth while you're filling the pipeline and nurturing people through the pipeline for new business.
Very interesting is that B2B space is something that most business operators are always looking for, some type of new tactics they can learn. So very informative, Scott. And so if you're just tuning in here on Facebook Live, this is the Taste Media Group Intelligence Series, here live with Scott Christiansen of Root3. And very few people know that Scott was my former manager.
First manager.
Well, technically second, but yes, first manager, the only person who hired me twice. First time called me, said, hey, we want to offer you this job, yada, yada, yada. called me 15 minutes later, said, the job is off the table. We got to go back, but he made it happen. So Scott, for that, I'm always thankful for how you have helped myself and helped us flourish here as a video partner. And just getting back into kind of your career, and people that are watching this that say, hey, you know, myself and you kind of both come from a television background. And how has that kind of helped you throughout your career for people that are watching that maybe are in television or maybe are in the working more on the agency side and maybe want to get into more mainstream media, but how has your experience kind of helped you lead to where you are today?
I think that the thing that I take from television, I think that molded me to be the person I am more than anything else, is live television. Live television waits for no one. There's a deadline. You're going to hit it. You have to put on the best show that you can make possible by coordinating 50 different people to come together at 5 o'clock on the dot, and you're live for 30 minutes. There's no safety net. You've got to do it.
Exactly.
And coming up in that environment straight out of college and spending a decade in that environment and growing in that environment up to different levels to where eventually managing divisions of station groups is kind of drives how we serve businesses. We do a lot, we do it fast, and we do it without a safety net. We expect people to hold us accountable for what we do.
Exactly. I think that like you said, it's more so thinking, you have to think fast. Like you don't have time to really contemplate, and I think that's kind of assisted in our growth on the video side is that as we've transitioned into live productions, it's not really, you don't have to be you can be as methodical as you can, but at a certain point you just have to kind of let it be and let the chips fall where they might, and as long as you set yourself in the best position, you're usually going to be okay in the long run.
And what you brought to the table at a time, and the reason I hired Thatcher is because we didn't know what to do with our websites. On
this
television.
is circa, this is over 10 years ago, so it's not today.
Well, the thing about television is that you can't use your television assets online. So it's not as easy to come up with what's your online brand as you might think being a television station. And so, the thing that I think the Taste Media Group does and that we try to do is adapt to changes in media, how people consume it, what you can do, what the possibilities are. And so that's what's important about media today.
Exactly, and so for everyone that's watching out there, talk about some of your experience though, because you came up at a relatively young age within the Chicago market and just how that what that career progression looked like for those that are watching at home that might be journalism, broadcast majors as well.
So I'm supposed to talk nice about getting into journalism today. It's hard. It's hard, and not because I don't love journalism, but because the industry is trying to figure out how it can be profitable and pay enough journalists to actually put a good product out there. So, one of the reasons that I had a hard time staying in journalism is I was managing divisions of television groups that were putting on 5 times more news than we used to, with about a third of the staff that we used to have.
And this was 10 years ago, so it's probably even harder now.
It's a tough place to be, and I don't have the answers for it.
Yeah, no, it definitely is, and coming from University of Missouri, where we had a producer track, a talent track, it's kind of, it's disheartening to see how many people don't stick with it in a way, you know what I mean? And obviously working and being able to run your own company there's obviously pluses to that, but just seeing how many people end up falling to the wayside just through various career options, I think it definitely is something that hopefully can right itself in the long run, and that's yet to be seen. But just kind of talking here then about Root3 and what you guys have going on here. I know you're pretty involved in philanthropic.
All of
Tough
those
one.
things. Yes.
Tough one. I had my teeth pulled, so I still am doing this with half my tongue is numb right now, so it's just incredible I'm able to articulate anything.
You're doing great.
But kind of talk about how you're able to incorporate your personal passions, which is being active, the active lifestyle, into what you're able to do with Root3.
Well, the philanthropic side of things is just something that...
Way to just spit it out really clean there, too. Excellent job.
I actually, a quick anecdote, when I first was a reporter for public radio, my first job in public radio, I wrote a script and it had the word philanthropy or a version of it or philanthropic in it about 8 times in a 30-second reader because I didn't know another word for it.
So
or charity giver.
So I just played right into your strengths there. All right.
So I just wrote it. I didn't have to read it. The anchor that had to read it was so angry that he slipped that story into my stories the next day, so I would have to read it cold.
You deserve it.
But no, it's something that we believe in. It's something that I think that you have a responsibility to do. In Chicago, we're very involved in healthcare equity. We're involved in, through one of our team members who's on the board of a great not-for-profit called iGrow, with the violence on the South Side and creating pathways for success for kids on the South Side. And through our sponsorship of the Bank of America Chicago Marathon, we're actually providing heat sheets, those blankets that keep you warm for them all to go to the starting line this year. And that's just through the business. On the personal side, my wife runs a not-for-profit, and then through all of our kids' schools. So there's just so much to get involved in. It can get tough, but there's great causes out there to support.
Exactly. And do you want to talk a little bit more about your involvement in the Chicago Marathon this year?
The Chicago Marathon, we got involved in the Chicago Marathon. We actually created, I run a lot of, or participate in a lot of endurance races, and it always drove me crazy that you only get that blanket at the end after you finish. I don't usually use it at the end that much unless it's a really cold day. But at the beginning, you're walking to that starting line and you're standing in the start corral for about 45 minutes before the race starts. That's where I'm cold. I'm like, why aren't they providing those?
I wouldn't know. I barely can get
and think
like
about
half
all those.
mile in the gym, but
there's 50,000 runners. Think about all of those billboards on the back.
Oh yeah, exactly.
Of people for a sponsor. So heat sheets. We work with Heat Sheets, who makes the blankets, and I believed in what they do, and I went to the marathon, approached them, and asked, hey, we would like to sponsor this just for the charity runners. I can't handle 50,000, but there's about 10,000 charity runners at the race. So we get to do something great for the charity runners. We get to provide that comfort and safety as they go to the starting line and then in the starting corral. They're all going to be recycled and made into a bench that we'll be able to do our next interview.
Oh, all right. I didn't realize
maybe
that's
in another
sustainable.
year
Nice.
we'll do it on a bench, and the Root3 gets that branding.
Exactly. And crazy story, still one of the most crazy things I've ever done professionally is with heat sheets. When we went to the Boston Marathon, it was the year after the tragedy that had struck there. And so it was I'd been to the Chicago Marathon the year before with them, but we went with Chris and we literally walked to the starting line. I didn't have a I didn't have a press pass.
Right.
I had a journalism background, but
Yes.
no press pass for that day. And from my journalism background, I remember it just looked like you belong. And so I just followed Chris to the starting line, and it was pretty intense that year. I mean, for those people that were there, there were snipers up on they were not going to let anything again happen at that magnitude, which obviously it hasn't and didn't that year, but still pretty crazy experience with heat sheets going back, that was 4 or 5 years
Where the
now.
heat sheets actually became part of the security protocols.
Oh, well, those things are really, they're very cool in the way they're designed. I believe they have almost like NASA engineering behind them.
Yeah,
and
well, I don't
everything
want to
like
talk
that.
about Chris's company.
Fair enough. We can cut that out. But just going back then, Scott, and kind of wrapping up here at the Taste Media Group, our first episode in a long time. Hopefully you're enjoying watching here live on Facebook with Scott Christiansen of Root3. But something else, Scott, that we can kind of talk to this afternoon is, as we wrap up here, is you started Root3 at a time where you said you had about 10 to 15 years experience, professional experience before you really start, I shouldn't say 10 to 15, you had more than that as well, but to transition into owning your own company. You have 3 children at home, a lot going on. What made you kind of want to transition to that, where a lot of people reach that point in their career and not really think that it's an option to start their own entity up?
I think I'm a product of the time that I came up in business. When I first started in business was that transition between company people. You get that first job and you earn the gold watch. It was crazy that I was actually taking different jobs because the culture shifted. And then I think in your career, you kind of figure out what you're good at and what you want to do. The first phase of my career, I would say, was as a television producer, and I rose about as high as you can go as a television producer, and I looked around and I didn't want any of the jobs ahead of me. Or any of the jobs above me, so I had to figure out how to jump onto a different ladder. So I jumped into a different ladder into television management and production, and did that for a while. Then I television was shrinking, and I realized that really what I was doing was growing businesses. So if I was going to do that, why not do that in fields that are growing instead of just the one that was shrinking, the one that I was in. So I looked at starting my own business.
This is live, I should say. You're this is a lot of good information here. This God's just giving you the platform here. The sun just comes blaring in here. Go ahead.
But anyway, because The other thing is I realize is if you hang your own shingle, you're going to get opportunities to do the jobs that aren't posted anywhere online. They're not. No one's recruiting, hiring for some of these things. But if you put yourself in a position that you can say, "Hey, I do that," you could get some really cool jobs. And like I ended up running a studio and creating programming for E-Trade at a 3-story studio on 55th and Madison. Job wasn't posted.
Yeah.
I was doing a project for them, and they're like, "Hey, we have this. We're doing this. Can you do this for us?" So I think it was the product of the times, and I feel more comfortable running my own business than I do working for a business full time.
And do you think that you kind of keep that mindset too when people maybe reach out and say, hey, I have talent, but this day and age, some of the job postings I see out there are just not even really possible. I mean, I don't think companies quite understand skill sets yet. You know, the larger entities don't quite understand skill sets all the time. They don't understand what it takes to do, this job. This isn't one person's job. This is actually like 3 or 4 people's jobs.
Yes, that's true.
And I know sometimes there's no other option, but for the most part, what I'm trying to get at is, do you see, like, when people reach out to you, like, hey, this person has talent, they're motivated, they have a certain skill set. I know I don't have an exact, siloed job position for them, but I maybe want this person just to be on my team.
I was just interviewing a person today who has very qualified for the job that we're offering, but it also has these other talents that we don't really do. And what I told him, like, there's never been a person who's been hired here that has additional skills that we haven't figured out how to put to use. Mm-hmm. So what we do is we try to hire the core needs of the business, but we're always looking for those people who have that X factor and those extra things that they can do, that we can figure out how to fold that into the processes that we do and help them grow and help the company grow.
And that's great information for other business owners out there that are watching this, to always just keep an open eye for talent. If you find motivated people, try to get them on your team. Don't let them slip through the cracks, basically.
Sure.
Exactly. All right, cool. So thanks a lot for watching this episode of the Taste Media Group Intelligence Series. We've been in hiatus for a long time. Scott, thanks a lot for getting us kicked off here for this fall series.
Sure.
We're back in production here. Scott Christiansen from Root3 Marketing, and his company link will be included in this post. And tune in next week. We will have another guest, TBD, but sure. I will get another guest, and we will go from there. Thanks a lot for watching.